Hello students, this is HD Pawar Madam, Lecturer Department of Economics, Gokte PU College of Commerce and Science, Belgaum. Today I shall begin with the fourth topic of textbook poverty. From the textbook Indian Economic Development, today we will begin with poverty lesson first part. You please take the screenshots and note it down in your notebooks so you can study these notes only. So topic number 4, poverty. Poverty means, let us come see what is the meaning of poverty first. Poverty means inability. Inability means what? The person who does not have ability or who does not have the capacity or who is not able to get minimum basic requirements of life. What are the basic requirements of life? They are food, clothing, shelter or housing, you can write, basic education and basic health facilities. So a person who is not able to meet the minimum basic requirements of life is under a state of poverty. We call that condition as poverty. What is the mass poverty? Mass poverty means what? Millions of Indian people. Million means 1 million is equals to 10 lakh. So lakhs of people, or we use the term millions of Indian people are poor. Majority of the people are poor, you can say. Majority or millions of Indian people are poor and are not able to get the basic needs of life. Therefore, India is said to be suffering from mass poverty. Extent of poverty. What is the number of poor people in the country? How much? What is that percentage? The official data on poverty is made available to the public by Planning Commission of India. Planning Commission of India is a commission which plans the 5-year plans, and the head of the Planning Commission is the Prime Minister. Okay, so here the official data on poverty is made available to the public by Planning Commission of India, calculated or estimated on the basis of consumption expenditure. The data collected by NSSO, that is National Sample Survey Organization. You can just cut it short. You can just say this data is provided by Planning Commission of India through the National Sample Survey Organization. In the year 2011-12 census was conducted in the year 2011. That is next census will be in 2021. In 2011 census year, the number of poor people according to 2011 year is about 270 millions. You must remember this figure. It may come for fill in the blanks. As per the census year 2011, the number of poor are about 270 millions. That is 22% of the population is BPL. BPL I have written in bracket. You must know to expand it. Below poverty line population, Garibi Rekha ke niche. And 80% of the poor reside in rural areas. Out of this 22% people or 217 million people, 80% of these poor people, they live in rural India or rural areas. So poverty is more in rural areas. Poverty level is more in 4 states of UP, Bihar, MP and Odisha. That is UP, you know, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh and Odisha. Then let's come to the next question. What are the 2 types of poverty? They are absolute poverty and relative poverty. Absolute poverty, we see when where even the absolute poverty, when we say what is when you describe absolute poverty, it is a situation where even the basic or the minimum requirements of food, clothing, shelter, education and health facilities cannot be met by the people, means they are not able to get even the minimum requirements of life. They are what kind of people? They are BPL population, and such people or such BPL population, we term it as absolute poverty, absolutely poor, who are not even able to get basic requirements of life. They are BPL population and they are termed as absolute poor or absolute poverty. Then second one, take the screenshot. Relative poverty, we have seen absolute, where a person is not able to meet even the minimum requirements of life. Then relative poverty, here comparison of standard of living among the population of a country is taken into account. If standard of living of a class of people is compared to other class who has high standard of living, then it is relative poverty. Let me give an example to explain this. Say there is a person A who earns 20,000 income, and there is another person B who earns 10,000 income. Okay, so when we compare the standard of living of these two people, that is A and B, A who earns 20,000, B who earns 10,000, then in comparison, comparatively, relatively, relative means here in comparison to. Okay, so relatively the standard of living of A who is earning 20,000 is higher than the standard of living of person who is earning 10,000. So when you compare standard of living of two class of people and one class is higher than the other, then we say a standard of living is higher than the other, we say it is relative poverty. Relative here means in economics comparison to, in comparison to, comparatively, tulna mein. Okay, then for the purpose of defining poverty line, we divide the population into two. Poverty line means what? It is what? It divides the population into two parts. That is poor and non-poor. Poverty line, Garibi Rekha. We divide the population into two. It divides the population into two. That is poor and non-poor. Garib and not Garib. Okay. There are, however, many kinds of poor and non-poor. Now poverty line is dividing the people into poor and non-poor, and there are many kinds of poor and non-poor. There are categories in poor also and non-poor also. Poor types are, there are kinds are absolutely poor, ekdam poor, BPL population, below poverty line population. Absolutely poor, very poor, बहुत गरीब, and poor, गरीब. Okay. Non-poor are middle class, madhyam varg, upper middle class, the rich, the very rich, and absolutely rich. So there are five kinds in non-poor: middle class, upper middle class, the rich, the very rich, and absolutely rich. And poor are three kinds: absolutely poor, very poor, and the poor. Then categorizing or grouping the poor again. Okay, we have seen that absolutely poor, very poor, and poor. We are going to categorize that again. So these are the kinds of poor: absolutely poor, very poor, and poor. Now we categorize them, we will group them. That is, grouping the poor is one, chronic poor. Chronic poor means very poor. Okay, very poor. Chronic poor, in that there is again subdivision. A, people who are always poor. Okay, in chronic poor also there are two types, two categories come there. People who are always poor, and B, people who are usually poor, often poor. Usually poor means most of the time they are poor. They are always poor, and second is most of the time they are poor, usually poor, but sometimes have a little more money. Means most of the time they are poor, but once in a way due to some luck maybe they have a little money. Example of such poor who are usually poor are who are always poor and who are usually poor are casual workers, are grouped together as chronic poor. Casual means one who is doing multiple jobs, one or the other job, who does not have a fixed job. If he has some work, he does it today. If there is no work tomorrow, no work. He may do one work today, he may do some other work tomorrow. Such workers are called as casual workers. So chronic poor, people who are always poor, people who are usually poor. Then second one, transient poor. Transient poor means again they are grouped into two, categorized into two. Churning poor. Churning poor means who regularly move in and out of poverty. Kabhi idhar, kabhi udhar. Okay. Churning poor means who regularly move in and out of poverty. Sometimes they are rich, sometimes they are poor. Means sometimes they have money, sometimes they don't have money. Occasionally poor, B. Occasionally means who are rich most of the time, but may sometimes have a patch of bad luck. Together are called as transient poor. Occasionally poor means who are rich most of the time. कई बार वो हमेशा अमीर रहते हैं, पर ड्यू टू सम बैड लक they may become poor. They are called as occasionally poor. So churning and occasionally put together are called as transient poor. Example of such transient poor are small farmers, छोटे छोटे farmers, गरीब farmers, and seasonal workers. Seasonal workers means those workers who are not employed throughout the year, seasonally, as per season. Season में there is work, that time they are having work. Okay, seasonal work. Then third category is, third grouping is non-poor. Non-poor means who are never poor. They are always above the poverty line. So here there is a diagram that shows you. You just see here. Okay. 1 minute. Yes. Now you see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 diagrams are shown in one only. 5 diagrams are there here, 5 angles we have drawn. Then here we see the poverty line, dotted line. Here you see poverty line. Okay, poverty line divides the people into two, that is poor and non-poor. So here poverty line is there. Above poverty line they are non-poor. Below the dotted line, poverty line, they are poor. Okay. Yes, just a minute. Let me just correct it. Okay. Then here you see in the first two diagrams you see. 1 minute. Okay. Yes. A specific category is shown here. Just see. First one, always poor and usually poor together. They show aggregate category, that is total category. They are called as chronic poor. Always and usually poor together is called as chronic poor. Always poor means they are, see here, always below the poverty line. Usually poor means what? They are most of the time poor, but once in a way they have little money. They are chronic poor. Then we have transient poor, that is churning poor and usually, churning poor and occasionally poor. That is churning means they are moving in and out of poverty line. You just see this diagram here. Then occasionally poor means what? Most of the time they have money, but due to some bad patch or bad luck, they are under the poverty line. That is occasionally poor. So together they form transient poor. And never poor, that is they are always above the poverty line. Here you see they are never poor or they are non-poor. Okay. I hope you have understood this much. For today this is sufficient. Thank you.